I am beyond thrilled to be talking to Lord Browne, John Browne, and I kind of feel that lots of things that you've been doing and lots of efforts and endeavours across your life are so important and meaningful to a lot of people in this room. So it's a tremendous thrill to meet you and to be able to kind of get to know each other in front of an audience this evening. Where do you think we are, John, right now in terms of LGBT progress?
So, first of all, good evening. It's very good to be here. And it's actually very good to be with Macquarie as well, but not talking about infrastructure. This is quite a delight. I think we obviously have come a long way from where when I realised I was gay to where we are today. But there's been lots of bumps on the road, and there will continue to be that. I think it's the glass is half full, not half empty. But it's only half full, it needs topping up. When I started my life, I suppose, my life when I really understood my own sexuality, I was influenced by things that I think don't any longer exist in the measures that they did when I was that age. I had a mother who was a survivor of Auschwitz. There are no survivors left now. And she taught me a couple of lessons: never tell anybody a secret because they'll use it against you, and never be an identifiable member of a minority, because when the going gets tough, the majority always hurt the minority. Those 2 points probably still are relevant for many people in many environments. But when I was being educated at university, the law changed. It used to be illegal to be gay and do something about it. You were subject to blackmail. If anyone found out that you were gay, you could be threatened and possibly reported to the police. And they were quite delighted to make sure a lot of gay people went to jail. The law changed and nothing happened. The law didn't really change attitudes for ages, and that's why I was absolutely convinced that being in the closet, throwing away the key, and never ever being openly gay was the way to be in business and the way to be in my life. So I conducted, as many people did in those days, 2 lives: one a public life of a very well-behaved bachelor, and the other one a secret life. I was, after all, a young man in New York and San Francisco, and what would a young man do in San Francisco and New York?
We've got plenty of time, actually.
That may be another book. Someone did ask me the other day, and I did actually say, one of the people who genuinely saw Bette Midler being accompanied by Barry Manilow wearing a towel in an establishment. That was pretty amazing. There it was. So I think things have come a long way, and I hope people don't have to behave like that, because in the end, when you store up the truth and you avoid talking about it, it always stores up trouble.
So we're having this conversation in the heart of the city, this beautiful building. But you've worked around the world. We were just kind of talking about where you have worked before coming on stage. In some territories we couldn't even be doing this. We'd be carted off if we were having this conversation. What have you found, both in your BP days and in your portfolio career since? Where is it still really hard, and where is it getting better?
So I think the point is well made. We're sitting here in the middle of the City of London. and we can easily have a conversation about sexuality, we can have a conversation about gender, and everybody says, absolutely, let's have another conversation, and we all probably agree really quite quickly, and we want to do something about it. So go a little bit out of London, go north a bit. I won't pick a city because someone will say that's not true, but pick a city of your own choice and say, can we have this meeting there? Can we actually talk like this? I know for sure. We could talk in New York like this, but go to Albany, New York, or we could talk in San Francisco and go to Stockton, or go to the middle of the oil fields in California, or go to West Texas and the Permian Basin, and the enlightenment you might see in the capital cities evaporates very quickly. So people have to be cautious and different. Different in the way they behave. They have to be very, very cautious. Now, there are always exceptions. And I think the good news is that there are, I would say in the West, if I can put it like that, there's so much change which has enabled gay people to be together, notably the legitimization of marriage, which has been such a very important symbolic act as well as a real act, which has changed attitudes in lots of places. When I wrote The Glass Closet, I was interviewed, this was exactly 5 years ago it was published, I was interviewed by many newspapers, radio stations, one of which was RT, the Russian station. So they pressed me and said, they asked me some very bizarre questions, but they pressed me and said, well, you know, what about gay people in Russia? So I said, well, it seems to me that any company can post a gay person to Russia, and that will be fine as long as they don't break the law. So this was reported in the following way, that Lord Browne believed that all people in Russia should be gay, and they should be recognized as such. And I got a message from the Kremlin saying, don't meddle with our internal affairs. Equally, a friend of mine in Dubai, who's my age, married with children, when I was over in Dubai, he said, come and have supper. I did, and he said, why on earth did you write that stupid book? So I said, well, I don't think it's stupid, and I wanted to write it to stop other people having the same problem and getting into a real twist by trying to live two lives when things around them are changing. So, and he said, but in that case, we will all make sure here it's as if you've never written this book. And that's the way it's treated. It's as if it never happened.
So how do we move the dial on that? I mean, you know, one of the things that I know people in this room are concerned, you've been very concerned about, is how do we, sitting in this Leaning Tower in the heart of the city of London, how do we use that economic power stored in institutions like this and others that you work with and others in this room, how do we make that economic power make social change?
So I think for me, the important thing is to remember it is not about groups, it's about individuals, it's about an individual. And I think in business, it's the responsibility of any business to make it safe for an employee to come to work and leave work. Yeah. And safe means, ideally, being themselves, expressing themselves the way they are rather than how someone wants them to be. But more importantly, not to do something which imperils their safety by being out of kilter with the society around them. So it's all very well to say, you know, I will make sure that in my office in Uganda, everybody can be openly gay if they want, only to find out that when they leave the office, they're going to get beaten up by thugs. Yeah. So that would be irresponsible. So I think you have to take this step by step and very carefully, because it's individuals. What CEOs can do, you always have an agenda with the head of state, which is human rights.
Right.
And this is part of that.
Have you found that, again, since BP, and since that moment where you had to come out, in that sense, having thrown the key away, as you said earlier, but have you found that easier, did you? Have you found that easier because of the fact you've stepped onto a platform, for good or ill, you were put on the platform for good or ill? Have you found it easier to have that conversation with, you know, the Putins of this world or the heads of state where stuff is stuck?
Well, I think, first of all, I don't have them as frequently as I used to when I was running BP, which was certainly a monthly, if not weekly diet that I had. So, but I think now I talk in different parts of the world, people listen to me, but also what has happened is none of my relationships in any part of the world has been affected by my coming out. None whatsoever. Now maybe it's because I get to be grandfathered, as it were.
Right.
You know, I just sort of look older and I've been around and they say, well, that's fine, or sort of, he's harmless. And so I'm treated in that way, probably. But actually, it hasn't affected anybody, certainly in the Middle East, not at all.
I mean, there's no doubt right now that in some territories where we thought we were going forward, we're now going backwards on this conversation. And I was with the CEO of a French business about 6 months ago, and in my role I was getting them ready for a public platform. And they walked in, and it was about midway through the day, and they said, God, you know, we're not talking about diversity again. I've been talking about diversity since 8 o'clock this morning. I'm absolutely sick of it. Do you see fatigue in this conversation? Do you see us going backwards in some places? If you agree, what do we do?
Well, I think it's a mixed record. It seems to me in business, the access point always is inclusion, which is about team engagement, and about the fact that performance is enhanced significantly with consistent team alignment. And I think team alignment needs real inclusion, which is to say that people have to feel absolutely safe that they are actually included. So if you exclude just one person, then everyone says, well, I get it. You mean I'm only included when I fit, rather than being included? And so it begins to weaken the level of engagement. And engagement and excess performance in business is clearly demonstrated. So I think you can persuade people to an extent. I think that the problem is the surrounding environment, where people do not get criticised for making bigoted statements, absolutely bigoted statements. Whereas inside a corporation, or certainly in my book, if anyone behaved in a bigoted way, I don't care who they are, they have to go. They have to go. The ultimate sanction of an employer is to get rid of someone for that reason.
So you actually think global corporates are getting on with this better than governments right now?
Well, I think they can control the environment a bit more, although the environment is, I think, reasonably hostile. Look at some of the balkanized web.
Yeah.
Look at what goes on there. Look at Twitter responses to, even the President of the United States. Look at all these things, and look at the rise of marginal and rather bigoted parties. Look at the rise of anti-Semitism here. Who would have believed it? Who would have believed it? For me, it stands equal to the issue of LGBTI discrimination. Probably more.
We were watching last night parents standing outside a school in Birmingham saying that they don't want their children to learn and understand about all the options in their life. We are going backwards in places. We're going backwards in this country.
So I think it's, when I wrote The Glass Closet, one of the people I interviewed was a great lawyer, Lord Justice here. And as I was leaving his chambers, We had a very interesting chat. He had to go and sit. His clerk got him out and he said, John, there's just one, this is Adrian Fulford, just one thing I want to tell you. He said, it's all summarized by constant vigilance is needed. And that is what I think we need. It's constant vigilance. Because if you don't react to each bad move, then it's immediately accepted.
Right.
And acceptance of this terrible behavior is easy. You slip in to it so easily. So if there's one constructive thing people can do is to actually call it out every time, every single time.
So I promise, ladies and gentlemen, that this is not a book tour. John is actually here to talk to us about his commitment, but he has got a book coming out. It's called, rather interestingly, Make, Think, Imagine. It's got a beautiful cover. Tell us a bit about it before we close. And I think this link, which I know you've written with my old friend Tommy Stanley about in one of your other books, Connect, between how business can engage radically with society, which you talk about in this book. How do you take this story on, this idea on in your forthcoming book?
Well, this book is about the progress of civilization, based on actually what technology brings us, what engineering technology brings us, from the Flint axe to the James Webb Space Telescope, which is going to be 1 million miles out there, and the so-called second Lagrangian point, looking at the beginning of time. So all of that is about civilization. And civilization only works, I think, if leaders do three things. First, they absolutely must understand the direction they're going in. None of this happens without direction. Secondly, they've got boundaries over what they do. So someone can invent something, and we can all invent things, but should we use it or not is a separate decision. CRISPR-9, I can tell you, easy to use. We could modify embryos, not a problem. I could probably cook up a pathogen or two pretty quickly with some graduate students in 24 hours. Or how about a drone that will kill you with facial recognition, but just one person, just you. So all these things are about boundaries. And then in order to get them done, you really have to believe that you're going to engage people, really engage people, and that's about inclusion. So in all my books, they will end up in different variations of a tune, an important tune that goes through them. But this one's about, it's about the clash of civilization. It's about, do we actually accept what it is that's going on? I tell a story, it's about glass towers as well. There's a big debate about whether robots will reduce employment. And I think this debate is a bit like in 1870, the grandees in the city saying, if we reduce the working week to below 68 hours, what are my peasants and retainers going to do on my lands? Because that's what it was 68 hours on average. So imagine having that conversation today. We don't have those sorts of conversations, neither should we have one which says, we think it's good for people to work 35 hours a week, which is where we've got to. What if they work 25 hours? How do we know that's not better? So it's just about relativity, isn't it? That's all it is.
And the book's out at the end of the month?
The publication date's the end of the month, but I understand you can buy it right now. I tell you something, that if you buy it in the right way, it goes onto the Nielsen book scan, which means I can get up into the rankings, which is all about momentum, in the right way.
Let's help John get right up into the top of the ranking, shall we? Not least to thank you for being here tonight. I've got to go and buy the book, John, not least to find the drone that you talk about, because there are one or two people I would like to kill right now, which is a great idea. Look, I'm conscious that we need to get on with fundraising, something that John has been hugely behind, and I think from your point of view, raising money for the cause is so important globally, isn't it? Just to finish.
Very. I mean, there's never enough money to go around. So those who really believe in something need to contribute. And I've always believed it. I do it, and I think it's really important. You know, I always think one of the things about raising money is not only the amount, it's the source. And the source comes with a big message. And I think that message is really worth having.
What a perfect way to end. I mean, I hope you're feeling as inspired as I'm feeling. Again, many of us have read what John has written. We've watched your career, and I cannot thank you enough for joining us to help do a bit of tub thumping, but also a bit of inspiration tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Lord John Browne.